Being, a seed, the one that shoots up, springs. Life that kindles, never dies out. Arrow, a goal that inspires. Future that intrigues, amazes. In a new, fresh, invigorated form to take the giant stride. STL, Beyond Tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to day 2 of the Business Today Tech Conclave. Great to have all of you back with us. Yesterday, we had some exciting sessions on education, on e-healthcare. We had a conversation with Microsoft India President Anand Maheshwari and an exciting keynote by Puneet Chandok of AWS. Today, we also have a packed lineup. We start the day with a conversation with Dr. Anand Agarwal of STL, followed by a panel discussion on one of the most exciting themes in technology in recent times, and that's 5G. Wouldn't we all like our internet to just fly? So let's get started with that conversation.
Hello and welcome. Joining us on Business Today is Dr. Anand Agarwal, the Group CEO at STL. It's great to have this opportunity to speak with him. Anand has, of course, been driving technological changes. We've seen that at the group level as well. He's really taken that advancement to everyday lives and changed the company from to a global leader, from pure optical connectivity to very advanced technological and end-to-end network solutions. So it's great to have him with us on this tech conversation. Anand, to start off with, share with us some of the trends that you are seeing currently when it comes to innovations and the tech landscape, and how STL is driving some of these solutions globally.
Sure, Abba. So thank you for having me. The trends that we are seeing across the globe clearly is that digital is becoming all-encompassing at various levels, and in the last 18 months, the pandemic has accelerated that significantly. I mean, for us as individuals, we are now seeing things like online education being a great driver, streaming entertainment, synchronous gaming, e-commerce, associated fintech. We are now experiencing all of this at a daily level, and these have become like mainstays of our living and experiencing. And on top of this, then there are the AI part of it, the AI devices, whether it's Alexa or Siri or Google Home, which are making the experience more richer. So that's at individual level. If I see that at enterprise levels, one major shift which has happened is that digital-based collaboration at a global level has become the real norm in lieu of the physical collaboration. And we are seeing multiple interactions with two-way video interactions, Zoom calls going through the roof. But the less obvious thing is the shift of all applications which has happened to the cloud, whether it is for, say, enterprise applications like SAP or Salesforce, or for applications like even basic applications like Office 360. We are accessing all of this from the cloud, and we are being connected across locations, across devices. The entire accessibility has increased tremendously. And this is happening because of the fact that both connectivity as well as compute has become ubiquitous. There are now more widespread applications of robotics, of machine learning, in day-to-day process controls, as well as enterprise decision support. If you start thinking and seeing this at a wider level, in the rural parts of our country, digital is moving in both in terms of the selling side, the marketplace side, as well as on the productivity side in terms of IoT sensing, which is impacting both the productivity per unit land as well as the selling price once the intermediary sort of gets removed between the farmers as well as the buyers. And taking it further, in cities and countries, digital transformation is happening through e-governance. We saw that in identification means like Aadhaar. We are seeing that more locally in terms of things like contact tracing, or even for things like vaccine delivery. So we are seeing this digital shift happening across from individuals to enterprises to cities and governance. And we are at STL, we are clearly involved across the stack of digital transformation. We are very strong in the connectivity layer, where we are connecting thousands and thousands of villages and millions of people in rural India, in Maharashtra, in Telangana, in the rest of the country. We are involved in the cloud layer with creation of multiple data centers for Indian Navy, as well as the large data cloud providers globally, Europe and elsewhere. And we are also involved in the decision support ecosystem in smart cities like Kakinada, where we are running multiple services from say traffic control to safety and security for such cities. And we are doing that in collaboration with, say, recently we announced a collaboration with Facebook for radio development for 4G and 5G, as well as with Microsoft Azure to deliver both the operations and billing software to our customers over cloud. So we are entirely involved in this end-to-end digital transformation, and we are enabling that at the edge with our customers for the larger ecosystem.
While you've touched upon it, of course, Anand, share with us or really elaborate on the importance for a country like India to invest in digital infrastructure. A company like yours is, of course, doing this. We've been seeing the capital outlay on ground and taking this to the farthest corners of the country. But share with us how critical this is going to be as we evolve as a nation.
No, absolutely. A few things we have to clearly understand. We have to understand that digital is different from telecom. Digital is really becoming all encompassing. And digital, there are a few aspects. There is an aspect of service, and then there is an aspect of infrastructure. So the infrastructure aspect has to be seen in exactly the same way that we see any other physical infrastructure, whether it's roads, railways, highways, ports, or airports, or anything like that. So investment in physical infrastructure is extremely important. India is doing some part of it, but I think it needs to do much more with the involvement of all ecosystem providers, not only telcos, but infrastructure companies, government, cloud companies, private equity providers. It needs to invest at least $15 to $17 billion annually on the digital infrastructure. And at the same time, it's a great time for the Indian ecosystem to be providing newer applications, newer services with the advent of what's happening with the advent of both 5G and cloud coming in, which is at the intersection of hardware and software. So I think it's a great time for India to take a leapfrog in this fourth industrial revolution, which is the entire fourth industrial revolution is the foundation is digital. And for that digital to happen, the capabilities on both hardware and software needs to grow simultaneously. And I think companies like us, as well as the larger ecosystem, is evolving towards that. But we have to do it with a sense of much more urgency and with a mission mode, so that the ecosystem of private enterprise, the ecosystem of government, the ecosystem of academia, the ecosystem of startups, and all work together towards making that happen.
Talking about the government as well and public-private partnerships, we have seen some of this being implemented or looked at. For example, with the BharatNet program and the implementation of that. That's one aspect, of course. In what other ways do you feel that one can make this a possibility or a reality? Where else do you see the gaps?
So it has to be approached in a very similar manner as we are approaching, say, the highway build, because the digital infrastructure build is extremely analogous to the physical roadway build. So BharatNet is a great program for connecting the last mile, literally the last mile between, say, the Gram Panchayat and the village. The core infrastructure which connects up to that point, up to the block, up to districts, up to the cities, creating the national highways parlance, also creating the complete end-to-end highways. There has to be an involvement from the government, in both setting up policies and setting up they are doing it for the highways. So I think a comprehensive plan, investment, and then monetization needs to happen with this public-private partnership.
Okay. Talk to us also about new technologies, the Open RAN, FTTX, etc. How are these changing the industry landscape?
See, clearly the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of the networks, and the pull which is coming is being actually satiated with the availability of the right technology at the right time and the right cost structure and affordability. And that's where the new technologies of whether you're talking about Open RAN and FTTX all come within this, because the new ecosystem is all pervasive and all enabling. The boundaries between traditional telecom and IT is going away. So what's happening with the new ecosystem is, one is the fact that it is at the edge. It's whether it's the connectivity part, whether it's the data center, all of it is being created right very close to the consumer or the enterprise. The other aspect is that it is no longer either a wired network or a wireless network. It is a combined network. A 5G network is as much a fiber-based network as it is a as it is a wireless network. And the other dimension, what is happening is that it is no longer only about connectivities. It is connectivity with compute, a very high degree of compute and processing capability, along with a very fast bandwidth capability. Plus, it is both hardware where hardware is required and software in the cloud. So these technologies are all becoming now open technologies. These are becoming non-proprietary. These are becoming ecosystem-oriented technologies. So the Open RAN that we are talking about, or programmable fiber to the home, or fiber to the data center, or fiber to the cell site, all these technologies are that I described. These are all edge technologies. These are where hardware and software get disaggregated. These are where wired and wireless come together, and they are actually taking advantage of the fact that we have very high processing speeds and fast processing power available at the edge. So fast processing power with fast connectivity is making all these technologies available, which is the best time towards getting all the digital applications to the users out there.
As a company, what is exciting at the moment? I know you're always on top of several plans and advancements, whether it's wireless 5G, whether it's other infrastructure that you're catering to. Share with us really what you're doing currently in terms of innovation, what we can look forward to over the next few months.
Sure. So at one level, we have great degree of expertise on the optical transport, which is everything to do with high degree of data transfer over optical fibers. We have built a similar set of capabilities on the wireless end as well, of doing it at the conjunction of wired and wireless. And to top it all, we added this capability to create the full end-to-end networks with our system integration capabilities. And we have done it with both organic investments in capacities, in R&D technologies, as well as investments in organizations across globe. Over the last 4 years, just to give you an example, we have acquired a optical fiber cable company in Europe. We have acquired an interconnect capability. We have recently also acquired a data center integration capability, as well as a network integration company, all of these in Europe. And we have invested in a 5G disaggregated software company in Israel. So the idea for us clearly is that whatever this digital transformation which is happening at the edge where consumers are there, at the edge where enterprises are there, at the edge where industries and the data centers are coming there, we enable that transformation with our capabilities on the optical side, with our capabilities on the wireless side, with our capabilities on system integration and software piece. So all these capabilities we are building and bringing on the edge to serve our customers. And our customers are the telcos, our customers are cloud companies, our customers are large enterprises, and citizen networks, which includes both rural broadband and the smart city initiatives. So we're extremely excited with the shift that is happening, and we believe it is the right time for companies like us and for a country like India to really move forward and take a lead instead of being follower that we typically do.
Give us a perspective, Anand, in terms of the kind of demand, and you've already outlined for us, of course, the speed of acceleration. So we know that demand continues to be intact and quite strong, in fact. But in terms of what you're factoring in, how you see the projections for the industry now going forward, if you could paint a picture for us.
Sure. So the shift in demand is happening to the fact that, as I said, traditionally the demand as well as the investments was being done by largely the traditional telcos. Now we are seeing additional investment coming in globally. We are seeing additional investments coming in from cloud companies. So cloud companies are setting up their own data centers, are setting up their own networks and investing hugely in this digital shift and enablement of cloud. We are seeing governments pitching in. We are seeing the large investment that US has come in with on the infrastructure bill, where the digital infrastructure is a big amount part of it. We have just seen UK come up with the similar thing. We have seen India now investing in BharatNet in a major way. So governments have come in as well. We are seeing at the same time private equity coming in and investing in a large way in the infrastructure. So private equity funds, which used to be largely getting into physical infrastructure, are also moving into digital infrastructure. So with all this new capital coming in the digital arena, at one level, infrastructure is getting created. At other level, great new applications are becoming more and more mainstream and more affordable. So clearly, we are extremely excited because there is a pull coming in from the users. There are great technologies which are available at the right price points, and then there is to satiate this all. There is great degree of investment, which is making it all affordable for volume adoption.
Fantastic, Anand. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us some of the vision and the kind of manner in which the landscape continues to evolve. It promises to be an exciting time. Thanks so much for joining us here on Business Today.
Sure. Thanks.
Beam, a seed, the one that shoots up, springs. Life that kindles, never dies out. Arrow, a goal that inspires. Future that intrigues, amazes. In a new, fresh, invigorated form to take the giant stride. STL, beyond tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Business Today Tech Conclave, the rise of 5G, fifth generation mobility for everyone. And today we have a fantastic panel of experts, industry leading lights who understand this subject, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Rajan Wagadia, the Vice President and President of Qualcomm India and SAARC, to the panel. Welcome, Rajan. We also have Shyam Mardikar, the President and Group CTO, Mobility of Reliance Jio with us. Welcome, Shyam. Randeep Sekhon, the CTO of Bharti Airtel. Welcome, Randeep. Christopher Rice, the CEO of Access Solution Business at STL. Christopher, a warm welcome. And finally, Thompson P. Nyanam, the Managing Director and Global CEO of 3i Infotech. The backdrop for a conversation at the Business Today Tech Conclave on fifth generation mobile technology is significant. As we know, India is at the cusp of going down the path of 5G. You've seen how fourth generation mobility has played out, and the promise is immense. It also revolves around the ability of the operators to invest, of the entire ecosystem, the technology partners, the device manufacturers, and all the applications and services that could become possible in a genuine 5G environment. And that's what I'm going to pick on today with all the experts that we have on the panel today. I'm going to start with Randeep, you as one of India's largest leading mobile operators, and you've sort of seen the entire evolution of the Indian telecom industry from a technology point of view. Today, if we were to explain the promise of 5G, its advent, its rise, to everyone who is tuning in to watch this discussion with stalwarts like yourself, how would you quickly describe this to set the context for today's discussion? Randeep, over to you.
5G has been spoken about and talked about a lot. We can see it as two different impacts on India. One is for the Indian industry and one is for the Indian consumer. If you look at Indian consumer and Indian industry today, like you said, we have seen the 4G really being available to real masses, to all remote corners of India. But if we see the 4G speeds in India today and we benchmark using any crowdsourced open benchmark company, they will show that Indian 4G speeds are relatively lower to other countries where 4G speeds are quite high. The reason for that is two. One is our number of users, which we have, millions of users, more than 650 million users on 4G networks today in India. And second is also the spectrum tranches we hold. We hold average of a 55 to 60 megahertz tranche between the three operators per operator. So so much of subscriber density, we are not able to get the speeds which we would like to give. What 5G will offer will give you a larger 100 megahertz in one go tranche in sub-6, which will really give a relief to the capacity which a current tower can generate. And then all the technologies like mesh MIMO, like the 5G itself, and the devices are able to now do carrier aggregation over multiple bands. All those things added up will give a much faster experience to a B2C customer. If you add to it a latency, then you will find that it will be even a lower latency service, which will open up services. Not only, I think the first killer application will be faster mobile broadband, because today, again, you find some pockets in every city where mobile broadband is slow and people do not have access to wired broadband. So they depend only on mobile broadband. I think that is the first one, which will really reach the masses. And you can say the trigger to that will be the device pricing in India today, which are today touching, without 5G being launched, around 17,000 rupees. So if the 5G was to be launched, I mean, we are hearing auctions early part of next year, let's say mid part of next year, 5G get launched, which is actually 12 months from now. I would imagine 5G devices would be 10 to 12,000. Maybe Rajan can comment on it, what he sees. If that is the sweet spot, and imagine this technology will be in the hand of every Indian. So we will get a great speeds on 5G for every Indian, and we will be able to give them better access to whether education or entertainment or working from home if they do not have wired access. For industries, Indian industry, we have a Digital India theme which is going on. We have Atmanirbhar India going on, which needs industries to really step up the game and to make India the cradle of manufacturing, if not in the world, but in Asia. So that would need industries to do the Industry 4.0 journey, which is the journey of safety, which is the journey of productivity, which is the journey of efficiency. 5G is actually custom built for industrial use cases, and that will enable those industries to use the massive IoTs, the data analytics parts, the cloud at the edge part, and that will really complement Indian industries to raise notches above where they stand today and compete with the best of the world. So I, as an Indian, is very excited that 5G will bring a promise of a better connectivity to a retail user and a great possibilities to the Indian industry.
Shyam, I have to come to you as the second operator on the panel to get your sense of which way things are headed. You, of course, have a very deep understanding of the technology part of it, the spectrum evolution. So I'm going to hand it over to you for your quick opening comments. Shyam.
See, the paradigms have changed over the last 1 or 2 years. I mean, there have been unfortunate reasons for those change of paradigm, pandemic be the case, but nonetheless, there is a change in paradigm. If you look at the demand side of paradigm, every citizen on the planet now needs hyperconnectivity. That's the fundamental change. If you look at the technology change of the paradigm, I think open networks have increased big time. Technology has increased leaps and bounds. Like I keep on saying, one fundamental difference which 5G is going to bring in this whole ecosystem is beyond connectivity. So far till 4G, as telcos, as communication professionals, the endeavor has been to connect the world, connect the people of the world, connect things of the world. But 5G for the first time is going beyond connectivity. And when I say beyond connectivity, I'm talking about what I've now started calling as the holy trinity of communication. There are three independent vectors which are now coming in together, amalgamating in a very serendipitous way to kind of get there. These are connectivity for sure, but compute and storage, which were erstwhile classical information technology domain vectors, are now getting very, very deeply embedded into communication as one particular ball game. And if you look at all three of them together, and you look at the evolution which has happened, and Moore's law, I mean, processing power doubling every year, which means over a 10-year period, we're talking about 1,000 times more increase. Kreider's law, Gilder's law, bandwidth doubling every year, or storage halving every year. I mean, which means 1,000 times more storage over 10 years, or 1,000 times more connectivity over 10 years, or 1,000 times more compute over 10 years through Moore. If you add all three of them together, you understand the humongous nature of the leap which the technology has taken just over a 10-year period. And I am pegging this 10-year period because the last big auctions on 3G and 4G were in 2010, when we saw our first kind of flavor of broadband. 3G started big time, then 4G started, then 4G overtook 3G. But over those last 10 years, if I multiply just these 3,000s over a 10-year period, we're talking about 1 billion times more capable technology now. And the demand side we already spoke about. Demand side is not only now for connectivity, the demand side is to actually pick up almost every aspect of your discrete life and convert it into a virtual window. Be it education, be it health. We've seen virtual ICUs in people's home. We've seen virtual classrooms all across the country. We have seen virtual retailing happening, virtual commerce happening, banking happening. You name the sector, you name the vector, all of them are now coming together because of this. And the underlying platform is all of these three factors of communication, the connectivity, the compute, and the storage, are now joined together as one clear output. Network is going closer to the user to top it all before I close. So now what we would have is this whole connectivity paradigm, in addition to compute and storage, getting closer, more spectral resources, more technological bounds. I think we are totally in to see a different way in which the world operates individually, as well as a group, as a society, as an industry, as an enterprise.
What Shyam is saying, if you were to try and break it down, takes me back to almost 2 decades when India first proposed a convergence law. We didn't see that happen, but here's what convergence is perhaps in real terms, from actual on-the-ground technology plus user plus the ecosystem development. And that point about the compute and storage getting added onto a network provider's menu, I want to follow it up with a question later on, whether this means that, what does this mean for the evolution of telcos? Rajan, your chips, your tech, deeply embedded in Indian telecom, not just recently, but practically for decades, including from the first advent of mobility and the entire debate that we saw between GSM and what your company has championed. For 5G, what does the emergence of 5G mean in India? And from your point of view, what I would also request you to add on is, in your view, what are the drivers going to be, apart from what Randeep and Shyam have just pointed out for us?
Good points covered by Randeep and Shyam. So I'm not going to dwell on that. I see 5G, and the way I compare it in a layman language, is like creating a highway, expressway or a highway, right? So what the fundamental question is, the highway is going to be the one which is typically we think, what is the road for? And then you think that the road is for a data communication or a voice call. So let's keep it there. The highway is created, There is a voice call, data call going. 5G is a wider highway, better data, better mobile broadband. What that also enables is a better road is going to create avenues for better restaurants, better tourism, better colleges on the highway. Imagine when you lay a road and if the road is good, what all it enables, which is peripheral to just the travel on the road from going from point A to point B. So 5G exactly like that is going to create avenues across. It's more like a platform, it's more like a highway, which is going to enable multiple times all of that. And when you enable that, it means multiple times connectivity. Everything is connectivity, right? So what I believe is that the true power of connectivity has been tested in the pandemic, and the real, the joy of what connectivity will deliver is going to be enjoyed when 5G comes in. So it's not just one device or your handset, which is basically the most tangible ones, but it's going to be the enterprises which are going to benefit, the individual people through all that surrounds us.
That's a wonderful opening, Rajan, and I think this 25-year epochal point that you make is significant, because what the COVID pandemic has done has led to significant business transformation. But accompanied with business transformation, the point that Randeep made was also about how things will evolve. I'm going to now go to Thompson, Nyanam, and Thompson, from your point of view, and this is a point because it's already come up, I'm asking you to expand on it. For instance, how do you see the cloud to edge convergence of network operations and security operations? Because the technology is in some ways redefining the landscape as we know it. So in that context, how would you foresee the future scenario?
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. I think I'll pick up from where Shyam left. I think he made a very important point in terms of this convergence of these vectors, in terms of compute, connect, and store. And I think the entire industry is changing and the lines are blurring. As you rightly pointed out, that, a lot of the disruption is also going to happen in the business models in terms of how what was typically technology services is now blurring with the potential opportunity for telco players as well. So key trends, the way I look at it, Siddharth, is 5G networks will drive edge computing services, because this is an extremely, a potent convergence of, explosive growth of IoT, big data, and real-time apps. That's one. And to your question on, the movement from cloud to edge, is the very clearly, if you see, the shift is happening for need for speed, lower latency, reduced cost of bandwidth, reliability of connections, AI capability at the source of action. So that becomes very important, because that's going to really drive the cloud to edge movement, and the need to near zero latency for real-time application, because that's going to be the critical inflection point. Because I don't think we have really solved that today. Can real-time applications, which could really drive mission-critical applications, or processes which monitor the edge, this a big change. I would call it, Siddharth, the change from a GPU to CPU. I think that's one point which I want to kind of talk about. The second one, I would say, probably I will quote Gartner's prediction. If you look at it currently, only 10% of our data is processed outside the data centers or in a cloud environment. By 2025, they predict almost 5G is going to just fuel and accelerate almost 75% at the edge of the network. So that's the second data point. The third data point, I would probably say another big driver, and I will probably again look at what IDCs are predicting. If you ask me, they are predicting almost 45% of the 3x times explosive growth of data in 5 years will need to be processed at the edge intelligently. So that's very important. And it also goes back to our old saying that data is the new oil, because there's going to be an explosion of data. And this also leads to the biggest change in terms of how do I manage data lifecycle at the edge, Siddharth. So that I think is a extremely, a big change. And this finally on the convergence, Siddharth, because see, the biggest convergence which is happening is the devices, humans, and humanoids. I'm using humanoids for cognitive devices. I think that's the key change which will drive this movement from cloud to edge, Siddharth.
All right. Again, some follow-up questions which I'll try and save for later. Christopher, I'm coming to you and taking off from what Thompson just mentioned. All of what you have heard from the operators in India and from the technology providers, how does it square up with what has happened globally? Has 5G service, wherever the few pockets where we are seeing them, really lived up to the promise that that the Indian operators, for example, are mentioning? And what would you add from a global perspective before we commented more in depth about India?
I think you hit on it, and it was also covered by a couple other folks around how is this really affecting enterprise, consumer, and devices, or humanoids, or smart devices, as I think Thompson said. And what this really comes down to is that 5G is really kind of the first technology that's being deployed very widely, 3GPP approved, but it's improved for low latency, ultra reliable communications, which was talked about. It was approved for dense IoT. It was approved for indoor applications that are first time really on par for speed with a better scheduler than Wi-Fi, even fixed wireless. And all of those use cases affect enterprise, consumer, and devices. It's also made differently, right? This is the first time, quite frankly, that there's an open option for deploying wireless technology that was mentioned earlier, O-RAN and Open RAN, right? And so that's going to be cloud native and software defined from inception. And I'd argue that the three things that are really coming together now, besides compute and storage and connectivity, are really what I would call, cloud, SDN, and openness. And I think those are going to be really key factors that drive 5G. And another big difference, and probably the last one I'll talk about for 5G, is in the environments, right? There's different environments in which it's being deployed. There's kind of the low band and great coverage environments to get very wide coverage. There's mid-band, which is kind of that trade-off between capacity and coverage. And then the ultra high band, which is very narrow, almost venue-like, but ultra high band and ultra high bandwidth. And so I think that's a way I look at it. And I think you're seeing all of that globally. What I just described, you are seeing globally. You are seeing stadiums and venues and what they call experience zones now for these millimeter wave kind of connections that are ultra highly reliable. You're seeing IoT applications that are happening at the edge that Thompson was talking about. All those things you're starting to see, we're seeing here in the States, and I think we're starting to see more globally as well.
Chris, I'm going to take follow-on questions with you and then go back the way we came on the panel to you. And before I do that, explain your backdrop. Very interesting, fascinating. What's the backdrop about?
I'm climbing the mountain, ready to provide wireless coverage to as wide area as possible.
Okay, why I asked you was last year I had written a story about how technology provider in India had set up what I called a deep eyes camera site on a wireless platform, which had the ability to peep 25 kilometers into China. But I'm not going there on this discussion. So let me come back to the operators first. Randeep, to you, and I'll try and keep this quick and rapid fire as much as I can. You spoke about cities. Anyone who sees himself as a user of 5G, both on the enterprise as well as the retail consumer side, the first question would be network availability. You spoke about handsets, but from a network point of view, will 5G start off beyond our cities, or will it follow the traditional sort of path of big population urban centers and then proliferating into what we would call Bharat, Randeep?
See, first of all, it will depend upon the capex investments expected, where there will be multiple factors on cost of rollout and cost of spectrum, things like that. But assuming, let's say, this is settled, I don't think it will be a city play, because if you really see today usage, if you see the users, they are available in the same high users are available actually in rural, far from rural, and of course suburban areas also. So if you really see when we benchmark our highest traffic carrying sites, they are peppered across India. I mean, really speaking, it is not divide any longer that the city guys use internet more. In fact, other way around.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is the divide, has the divide gone from a ARPU perspective as well?
ARPU in India is now not a differentiate at all, because you have three set different tiers. You have a 1.5 GB or 2 GB or 2.5 GB. Depends upon the usage you will go. I mean, postpaids for sure are largely in the top 20, 30, 50 cities of India. But the prepaid wise, there is actually really not a ARPU divide. It is basically how much you want to consume, you will choose your package. So I would say it is evenly spread. Prepaid ARPU is very, very even across the country. In fact, because of lack of wireline available in suburban and tier 3 cities, you'll find heavy users are there because they do not have a fallback in their home on a Wi-Fi, and hence they consume everything they consume on a 4G. So I would say, why should 5G not be there to serve those guys? Because they'll be the first ones to upgrade a phone with the phones available at, let's say, 10 to 15,000 rupees level. Why would they not avail? Because it will really increase their experience to a significantly high level. So I don't see it a city play.
You almost remind me of what happened when the first bids happened 25, 26, 27 years back in India, where there was more value for rural India than for the cities. But the question that I have for you is on handset pricing, which is very fundamental in a price conscious market to India. And I think you've given us a very nice point on ARPU. From a handset pricing perspective, what will keep handset prices low? What will be the driver there? Will it be network operator investments or something else that we are yet to see pan out?
I think good news is we are not very early in the technology adoption. So the first wave of expensive handsets is gone. Because generally any technology, when they come, the first wave of handsets, which the top handset vendors launch and the chip vendors launch their premium chips. So it is always coming in the top tier of the handset. It is done now. I mean, if you see, it is already coming in the middle tier of the chips as well as the handset pricing. And we are seeing it already with mass adoption in countries like China, that those players are now driving the pricing down for a mass adoption, more like a 10 to 12,000 or 15,000, 10 to 15,000, looking at the specs of the device. I mean, I would say that spec is on the specs of the device, but I would say that would be the price where the device would be. And today also, if you benchmark the heavy users and their device sweet spot of where they land, they are probably 2,000-3,000 shade lower than what we are seeing the 5G prices would be. So I would see they will be very easily upgrading to a 5G device. So I would say 5G devices will be enablers in mass adoption of 5G, and that will be critical, because the investment of an operator, if it is underutilized, that means he has to invest in 4G at the parallel same time, because 4G is being utilized. So I think this tilt of usage to 5G and early usage 5G. So the use case providers, the device guys, chip providers like Qualcomm, and the people who provide these phones, all will have to step in to make this as an affordable, far reachable service and quickly to uptake. I would say it will spin off not just the usage, it will also spin off use cases coming out of India, which India can export, because we haven't exported any 4G use cases to the world. We have only adopted what the world is using.
Well, Bharti did export a sort of app-based environment in Africa, but that's not the subject of the current debate. Shyam, I want to come quickly, and for the other panelists, please do pardon me. I'm not trying to get the two network operators to face off. This is not a general news debate, but I just want to quickly follow up for the sake of the understanding of our viewers. Shyam, the beyond cities point is well established. I think you yourself as a network operator have dealt with that. What I want you to pick up as a thought is, if handset prices are in the range of what Randeep is saying, and he's talking about an industry perspective, do you think the access price, the data price, will also be equally affordable? Will both go together, or do you see a mismatch because there are concerns around spectrum pricing?
See, I think one of the biggest challenges we face as a country, Siddharth, and I don't think it is even restricted to telecom. Telecom is a very classical case, that the amount of price sensitivity to a large number of Indian customers is immense. And if you look at how 4G kind of penetrated, and again, I mean, I am actually proud to take the Jio case study. I mean, we were sitting at nearly 150th rank on internet penetration, and we crossed over to a single first, second kind of rank in a matter of 4 to 5 years. We added, just we as one single operator, India much more than that as a single operator, added almost 400 to 500 million mobile broadband customers in a matter of last 5 years. Now, where did this all come from? And this all came from the only two fundamental tenets of using the service. Is the device affordable, and is the service affordable? And the biggest belly of Indian market, which is kind of the biggest consumer also from a size of consumption perspective, is coming out of the folks who actually use this more as a necessity than as any kind of luxury or a plus service. They need it, and hence they consume it. And this need is actually driven and accentuated by the fact that their affordability plays a very, very important factor. And today it has manifested in 20 different ways, because now the need is also beyond connectivity on education, also on rest of this, also health and everything else. So how do you bring it all together to give a service where the device is affordable and the network itself is affordable?
Shyam, a layman question. Will 5G be more affordable than 4G?
It has to be. I'm interrupting you because I think I believe we are discussing a rhetoric here in this country where I think the fundamental tenet of any service is our ability to consume it on a given price point. So I personally believe it's a moot question, because it's a chicken and egg. It is only going to take off because it will be affordable, is the way I am looking at it. At least the mass part of 5G.
Okay, Randeep, the same question, will 5G be cheaper than 4G in India?
Mathematically, you can say per GB it will be cheaper, because the 5G users will be consuming more GBs and probably paying not the same multiple of the usage they will do. I mean, to that extent, because that is what you have seen in the markets which are mature 5G markets like Korea and China, where it's a ubiquitous 5G coverage, and the users are in a large percentage now 5G users. So you find the usage really jumping up because of the sheer speed in which they are able to consume content as a retail user. So I would say per GB it will be cheaper. I do not know on a ARPU it will be cheaper. I don't think so. I think ARPUs in India need to go up at that level. The amount of investment.
Why will it not be cheaper on ARPUs?
Because you will need to make sure that the investment the operator makes on this rollout, it will be a absolutely new G rollout. I mean, there will be investment on transport, there will be investment on radios, there will be investment on OPEX, because all these radios will consume extra amount of power.
Is it possible for you to share a number of the capex that a national 5G rollout would entail, as long as you can share it in a forum like this?
I don't know, because it will depend upon, to give a politically answer, that it will depend upon what kind of MIMOs you use. Do you use what level of MESA MIMO do you use? What kind of ORAN or what footprint do you use? So I would say it is not straightaway answer, and we are still 12 months away to roll out.
One last try. How much do you expect spectrum to be as a percentage cost of the entire budget for a 5G rollout?
one more try to duck it by saying that the spectrum pricing is not capex. It is like paid over the years of the lens, value of the license. So it really doesn't impact on your cash flow. What impacts on your cash flow is the immediate capex you will spend to roll out the number of sites you roll out. India has more than 225-30,000 for Airtel and 260-270 for Jio. So that is the physical footprint of physical sites today. So you would like to keep a large portion of those sites to be enabled to 5G over first and second year. So I would imagine that will define the extent of investments which the operators will have to do. Spectrum pricing will be very vital because this thing, but eventually on cash flow, spectrum doesn't hit, but it hits on a long term your investment outlook. How much do you invest?
One quick word again from Shyam, and then I'm going to the rest of the panel. I'm sure they want to come in on these points also. In some ways, the same question, slightly differently worded. For you as a pure play 4G operator, the leap to 5G, what kind of capex do you have in mind? Are you talking about these numbers at this stage?
So I think just one qualifier before I even talk about capex, Siddharth, because I think that's very important for us as technology professionals to understand, is one bigger advantage which 5G gives us on the overall ecosystem is the programmability part of it. And the programmability of network gives a totally different kind of elasticity, if I might use the word, from a capex perspective. There will have to be a base capex for the physical assets which you need to do it. But if you are able to create, and fortunately, because of our late entry into the ecosystem, because of our already let's say to a large degree programmable network, I'm talking about transport, which is already all IP, it's fully software programmable. Backhaul, we are almost as far as the world, as far as the state of technology is concerned, most of it is now auto programmable. So driving capacity is here, which everybody mentioned is one of the biggest tenet of getting 5G up, is kind of on the fly. So, I mean, that hedges out a lot of requirement wherein you need to put in physical boxes to upgrade the network. Spectrum, like you said, has to be radiated, some on new radios, some on existing radios. What kind of capabilities do you have? One other advantage we have with us, and that is why it is very difficult to do a capex prediction, is a humongous lot, almost 100% of the radio and 100% of the core stack, as we've been telling to the world, is indigenous. We are building it out from the scratch. Partners like Qualcomm, Rajan is here, Intel, I think they are helping us out. It's a buy versus build kind of scenario, and I'm not only talking about the network, I'm talking about the technology itself that builds up the network. The investment patterns are radically different. Okay. So putting them into a conventional go out and buy it from a European vendor or an American vendor will be slightly difficult at this stage. But I think it will not be as, let's say, indomitable just because of the programmability of the network and just because we're doing a lot of intellectual property ourselves.
Delighted to hear those words, and for the audience, if I can try and summarize it in a layman word, 3 decades, India still has the spectrum pricing question that keeps coming up in one form or the other, as well as import dependence, and many of those points have been very beautifully explained by Shyam. I'm coming to the rest of the panel. I have this last round to do with them. Rajan, I'm coming to you first, and taking off from here, from a development and rollout perspective, what do you see are the key points that operators will have to focus on? We're practically now 3.5, 4 operators, heading perhaps to a slightly lower number on that. Given all of that background, how would you respond to my question?
Honestly, I think you have the right authorities on the operators here. So they are doing, well, they've done more than what we would have ever expected as consumers from them. And that clearly showed during the pandemic, right? None of us suffered, none of us. So I would say kudos to them. They're going to do that. You can hear them on the call today, the amount of enthusiasm they have, despite all what is going on. I think that will continue. So that's a very good thing that's happening. Now, in terms of devices, and probably I'm trying to answer a question which you raised in terms of the capex. I'm not trying to answer on behalf of Randeep or Shyam, but as per the GSMA report, around $890 billion are going to be spent on rolling out 5G networks globally, right? Over the next 5 years. So you can actually estimate that it's not a small investment. It's going to be a massive investment. And now we have got the spin of the spectrum also, right? That what is the spectrum going to be priced at what price? Again, I consider spectrum more like a highway or a sort of a, how you enable. You can't charge a toll on a highway. Spectrum is like a toll. If I have to just compare again one more time for ease of understanding of a general person, right? So it's like a toll. You decide to charge probably, let's say, 100 rupees, and then you decide to charge it 1,000 rupees. What's going to make a difference? The number of cars that are going to ply on that highway are going to reduce when you charge 1,000 rupees. What is that? Indirectly, it means is all the enabling ecosystem which was there on the highway, they're not going to earn money because it only earns money when you pass the car from there, right? So the point is, look at the analogy. If I reduce the toll and if it enables somebody to travel and more cars to travel, it's already it's actually helping the other ecosystem to grow up. Government earns more money out of that ecosystem, not from the toll. So that's a simple way of explaining spectrum. Coming to the ecosystem, I think Randeep raised a point about devices. For once in my 30 years, I have an opportunity to chase Randeep and Shyam. Most of the time they chase me. This is my time to chase them, and it's a pleasure, to be honest, right? The reason is, over the last 2 years, we enabled devices ecosystem in India. This is the first time it has happened that 5G has come. Devices have been launched in India. Around 60 models have already launched since last March to now. Very likely, and there were some price predictions that happened. One of the biggest drivers we have had at Qualcomm is to make 5G affordable, and we have an internal mantra called 5G for all. So what happened in case of 4G, where the device prices went down over 4 years, we are seeing the same level, the same price drops over less than 2 years. So what has happened is we have compressed the timeline. Affordability of devices have become very, very important. Of course, Jio here as a partner is there, and the Jio phone. Imagine if somebody questions us that, will device be affordable? Tell me one thing, 5G, the 4G Jio phone is a classic example of making 4G available to the hundreds of millions of the people in India. So I would say that India is at the right, I would say, spirit, both from the government side, in terms of enabling PLI and all the ecosystem to get products made in India. We as Qualcomm are enabling all of them, and we are happy to see that there is so much of charge in the air that we want to deliver, and we will be delivering faster than ever before, not just for India. And Randeep raised that point that it probably is going to enable startups, and we have not yet delivered. And you said deliver to the world. Believe me one thing, the startups that we are seeing, and we fuel some of those startups, we run some programs in India to enable startups. Most of the startups today, and if you see the unicorns also, have been unicorns primarily on basis of technology, right? And now I'm adding AI and all that. When you add that, imagine in 5 years, you're talking about no more a connectivity, it's intelligent connectivity, right? Or it's hyper connectivity, it's no more a simple connectivity. So the next stages are going to be still more interesting. 5 years from now, when we are talking, we are going to talk about AI and connectivity, not just about pipe of data or edge clouds, right? It's going to be more edge intelligence. So this is the beauty. I think we are all in the right state. Some enablers have to happen to ensure that the spirit of all of us on the ecosystem side isn't dampened by some regulations or spectrum pricing or something like that.
So given what you heard from the operators, how would you summarize the possibilities as you heard from them?
I'll try and answer it from a technology services provider perspective. So I see a huge opportunity for technology services providers like us to work very closely with the telecom operators, and we're already starting to do that globally as well. So I see a huge opportunity because a lot of these key changes. I'll just give you a few examples, and maybe I'll try and answer that for you. I'll try and answer your mood question you spoke about. Is the cost of 5G going to be same or cheaper? The way I look at it, the cost per transaction or cost per consumption is going to come down. Because when we move to the edge, the way we look at it, right, the processing moves to the edge, we are talking about changing the entire infrastructure management perspective.
Okay.
The cost of cloud will come down because we are going to move processing to the end. I'm going to move to the micro data centers. right? Reduce latency,
Yeah.
correct? And then since there's an explosion of data which is happening, I'm going to kind of bring in more intelligent applications to be selective about the data I want to use. So net effect, I would say that we'll be able to optimize cost. That's one. So that's a great opportunity which I see, right, where we work together. The second I see is the convergence of network operations and security operations. It's a key change which is happening. And now with the explosion of devices happening around as well, we could work very closely with the telco operators to offer SASE as a service today, because secure access and secure entry becomes very critical, where we could offer it, because the single biggest problem, even for a telco operator tomorrow, is going to be that, how am I going to secure so many devices, so many humanoids at the edge, right? So how do I provide edge-to-edge security using SASE becomes very important.
Right.
Third, finally, I would say is we need to get analytics to the edge, Siddharth. Because if I don't take analytics to the edge and get real-time analytics, decision-making, next best action is going to be very difficult. So all this has been theoretical frameworks today, but I'm seeing all this getting realized very quickly, because we're going to move this entire processing power, decision-making power, compress, probably maybe like what Rajan said also, that if you're able to move the processing power from a GPU to a CPU to a device level, it's going to be real time. And all these good stuff in terms of industrial IoT, all this good stuff in terms of it's going to become a reality. So this is going to be a big. And finally, I would say that ultimately the overarching or the theme which I look at it is the blockchain, because blockchain is again going to be the single biggest theme which is going to connect edge to edge, give us zero trust networks and complete traceability and compliance. Okay. So this is the various, the way I would look at it or answer it from more from a technology services provider, where I see, huge opportunities which this convergence is going to drive. So that.
Chris, the last word on the panel, quickly summarize this for all our viewers.
You can see that India, from the two folks who spoke today, is really at the forefront, talking about all the right things, doing the right things for the customers. I think, Ranjan had mentioned, how, globally, and certainly India is one of them, that really provided seamless operations for so many people during the pandemic and allowed, really the economy to continue. And I think that's kind of an untold story that really should get a little bit more notoriety and quite frankly, respect from, some of the folks who in the government for all that they've done worldwide, not just in India, but worldwide. But look, I also believe that, this 5G is a time where India can kind of step a little bit more almost on the world stage and in a couple ways. And what do I mean by that is that, this is really the first time we talked about openness. This is really the first time there's an open standardized RAN technology that offers common APIs, common interfaces for equipment that allows this kind of mix and match best in breed ability to deploy. And that's really important. And we have not ever had that before. And I think India can be at the forefront of that, right? There's an opportunity to be at the forefront of that and move, really deeper into the technology and telecom manufacturing. And there's some political things that are going on as well that actually make in India even a more of an opportunity, I believe. But I think that's a big thing. I also think that, you're going to see as this deploys more on these open platforms, operations, and we didn't really talk about it that much, but operations accounts usually for anywhere from 3 to 6 times the amount of cost that the capital is spent to put it in. In other words, you spend 3 to 6 times the amount of operating equipment there's a cost of capital to put it in. And these standardized interfaces on these open systems allow now newer software platforms to work across many different manufacturers. So this whole ability to bring up an ecosystem for applications, not just at the consumer level, but even at the network level to run these networks more efficiently is also there. So I think that India has a lot of chance to participate in this on the equipment side and delivery, on the applications to consumer, and on actually delivering more efficient networks, generally speaking.
There's been a lot of learning, policy, regulation, consumer behavior, network rollout, pricing, all of that in the last 2-3 decades that all our operators, and we have a pretty significant ecosystem, which will now perhaps come together nicely in a uniform manner to provide the kind of promise that 5G holds for every customer in India, whether it be enterprises or retail customers, because speed, better networks, and affordable devices are very, very significant. As we saw in the pandemic, for example, we saw study at home, but we also realized equally at that time that there were millions of children literally who did not have either the devices or the network access. And with what the government has just recently announced, and with 5G, just as a small illustration, things could change rapidly across Bharat and not just India. I'm going to thank my entire panel today for their wonderful views. Really enjoyed this debate and hope to catch up with you for more in the future. And to you, the viewer, if you've been, thank you very much for watching. With that, it's goodbye.
Here we are. We've come to the end of day 2 of the Business Today Tech Conclave. It's been an exciting journey and 2 days of power-packed conversations. I wish we had a day 3. Hopefully, we'll get to do that next time. Thank you for joining us. Do stay connected with us with our other events as well as content on Business Today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, powered by STL and 3i Infotech, our associate sponsor. Thank you. We'll see you around, and do stay connected to us here on Business Today.